On Blues Radio International, it's Jesse and Audrey taking you back to Phoenix for our Chief Medical Correspondent, Dr. Janice Johnston. Hi, Janice.
Hi, good morning.
Hello.
Good morning. We've got some great news, roughly 3 million doses a day of vaccine going out. We've got 20% of our population vaccinated. And from January to March, I understand there was an 80% drop in the positivity rate, but now, surprisingly, things have crept up 20%. Can you tell us what's going on?
Well, there's a couple of things I would think that are at play here. One is that restrictions are being loosened. So that's one of the big things that we see, and it varies from state to state. The other is that as people become vaccinated, even though we have not reached herd immunity, people are feeling really good, right? So they're like, well, I'm vaccinated, I'm good, I'm invincible. But what they forget is that they can be vectors for the virus and carry it to someone who has not been vaccinated. That's another key point. And then the other part is the variants that are out there. Thankfully, the vaccines to be protective for that. So depending on the community that you're in, here in Arizona, we're doing exceptionally well with our vaccine process. And so our numbers are not going up at all. So once we get to that point, and you keep hearing on the news that herd immunity, and herd immunity comes from two ways. One is that you have natural immunity through getting the disease. Of course, we do know that we don't think that natural immunity will last forever. It's hard to say. We think it may start to wane or go down after about 4 months. Personally, I have seen some patients where they've gotten COVID, unfortunately, 2 times. One early in the course of the pandemic, and again later in the pandemic. And unfortunately, the second time was actually worse, when you would think that possibly it would be easier because I have some innate immunity, but that just goes to show me that that innate immunity is starting to taper off. So innate immunity or natural immunity is one way to build that up. Of course, the other is with vaccinations. And thankfully, our country has been very fortunate to have a really good supply compared to other countries in the world. And, now we're seeing that lots of states have opened up the vaccine, what's the word? I can't think of the word. Who they're going to give it out to and what the indications for the age groups. Here in Arizona, where I live, we've gone all the way down to 16 already. And that was great. So that shows us that there's enough of the volume of the vaccines to open it up to everyone. Now, we do know that we're not going to get to 100%. There are going to be people who just aren't interested in getting vaccines for lots of different reasons, right? So some people are skeptical of vaccines, no matter if it's a tetanus shot or a flu shot or whatever, or a COVID shot. They feel like it's too new of a technology. They're worried about long-term side effects and such. But I can tell you just in the short term, about 50% of people will have no side effects to the COVID vaccine, and about 50% will. Of course, those are the ones that you hear about. And it's the typical kind of stuff that we would expect when your immune system is getting ramped up. So, headache, feeling kind of achy, maybe even some fevers and chills, and of course the sore arm seems to be a little bit more pronounced after the second vaccine. So that's going to be the second way that we get there.
Yeah, I actually was one of the people that was lucky enough to receive the 1-dose vaccine, and I was fine the first day. But then the day after, I had a headache, and that was it. And then I was fine. And I'm very grateful to have been able to take just the 1 dose. It was definitely I would imagine more convenient than having to go through lines and waiting on the second dose. I was having a conversation with somebody, just someone I wasn't very familiar with. And I know there's a lot of rumors and hearsay about, this and that, about what the vaccine can do to you, and what it does to you could be whether or not you've been exposed to COVID. And I had mentioned that I had gotten a headache after receiving my vaccine, and the person I was speaking to said, "Oh, well, then that means you must have been exposed to COVID at some point." And I explained I've never had COVID, and to my knowledge, I haven't been around anybody with COVID, so I'm not sure if that's accurate. What do you have to say about that?
Yeah, so the bottom line is we don't know, right? So if you get side effects to the vaccine, it could just be side effects to the vaccine. Anecdotally, I think that we have seen where people who have had COVID in the past, when they get their first vaccine, they do tend to get some side effects. And what does that mean? Potentially, it means that their body is queued up, right? So we've had some exposure before. Our immune system is ready to go, right? So we've got some predetermined, pre-programmed response to the vaccine. Not the vaccine itself, but our body making those spike proteins, which of course is what the vaccine is intended to do.
Let me ask you a question on a practical front. We're starting to see travel opening up in the country. How safe should we feel in traveling, and what ideas do you have that can help us travel more safely?
Yeah. So, I think everyone needs to weigh their own personal risks. So if you've got a lot of risk factors, your age, you're diabetic, you have COPD, you have asthma, diabetes, those kinds of things, and you may want to kind of think twice about going out into sort of a mass sort of transit, getting exposed to a lot more people. So that's number one. Number two, I think you need to weigh, have I been vaccinated or not? So if you've been vaccinated, then I think that, going out, back out and starting our normal lives again, and probably things won't get back to completely normal for quite some time, or maybe there will be restrictions for long periods of time. So that's the other thing to weigh in. And of course, when we do travel, I would expect that airlines are going to require continued masking for quite some time, or maybe even indefinitely. When I think about what I'm going to do personally when I travel, I think, what's the big deal about wearing a mask for a couple of hours on an airplane? We've all been there, right? Even before COVID, where we've heard somebody coughing either beside us or behind us or a few rows back from us. And you think about the spray that happens, whether that's they have the flu or tuberculosis or the whooping cough or whatever, right? So you're in this little vessel and things are circulating around. So to me personally, I think I probably will be wearing a mask indefinitely when I travel on the plane, not to protect just against COVID, but other things and things that, there's going to be another thing that pops up sometime down the road. Well, hopefully it won't be for a really long time. We had SARS, right? And that was super scary, same kind of thing, highly contagious. So I think that's the other thing that people really need to follow the guidelines. Right now, the airlines are requiring masking when people get on the airplane, and I think that that's a really good idea.
And we all know that masking is important because the disease is transmitted through respiratory droplets, as we've all learned from you. Thankfully, we have you to answer these questions. And as a mild to moderate germaphobe, even before the pandemic started, I was always obsessed with wiping things down and keeping surfaces clean, keeping my hands clean. If I went on a plane, I'd wipe down the tray table and everything. In this case with COVID, is it your opinion that surface contact isn't really what we need to be so worried about as much as the masking?
So just recently, and I think it was even yesterday, that the CDC came out talking about what is the risk of transmission from surfaces. And we thought that everything need to be wiped down, highest quality kind of disinfectant. In my office, we've been using a product called Cavi wipes. They come in like a little pop-up container, kind of just like a Lysol wipe would be. Super expensive, super hard to get. And now they're saying, you know what, just soap and water should be sufficient. And so we do think that the aerosolization of cough droplets is the primary way. Does it hurt to wipe everything down? Absolutely not, right? So I know that I actually have traveled a couple of times just in the recent little bit. When I go on the airplane, they hand me the little wipey, do your own thing and just make sure that your little space is nice and disinfected. And, honestly, probably not a bad idea, irrespective of COVID, to be wiping down your area.
I think that makes a lot of sense for all of us. Let's say someone wants to put on a musical event in their backyard or do something locally themselves, and they're not a venue, but they want to help musicians and they want to help us get back to live music. How can we responsibly pull something like that off as the weather gets warmer?
Yeah, definitely. I think outside events are safer than inside events. Keeping your guest list small would be the other thing to think about. And, if you have the potential to invite people who have been vaccinated, then you're really looking at a good, safe event. So I think to support our local community and get them back out there is just a wonderful thing, because we've all heard musicians were, they're going to be the last to go back. And, I can see that the local musicians or people playing in smaller clubs are already starting to get back out into the community, depending on the state and city. But it's the bigger ones that are going to take probably a little while. I've heard some rumblings of ones coming up soon. And, it's thankfully summertime, so we're probably going to be seeing some events happen outside, which is great. So we'll see, but people, once they get a few drinks in them, they're drinking, so they're taking their mask down, of course, because they need to have their drink. But then, of course, the masks, stay off after a period of time. So the biggest thing when you're at a concert, you want to enjoy yourself, but it gets loud, and you want to talk to your friends. And sometimes you can't hear each other that well. So what do you start to do? You start to yell, you start to get in somebody's ear and really, really get close. So just be thinking of those things and really try to be cautious in the meantime.
And that's a good segue to the question that I have for you, which is, I'm vaccinated, Jesse's vaccinated, you're vaccinated, everyone in my house is vaccinated, or everybody in the nightclub is vaccinated. At that point, do we need to be masked up? Can we still transmit the virus to each other with that small percentage of, the vaccine that might not be effective on the virus?
Yeah, so just to reiterate what the virus does, the vaccine does, is that it will protect you from getting severely ill, right, hospitalized, and death, right? And it's about 95%, right? So it's really, really, really good. And but there is a 5% chance, so that's 1 in 20 that could potentially actually get COVID and get some significant kind of issues. So it's not zero. Is it way better than what we had before? Absolutely, right? So, the CDC, they keep coming up with new recommendations. If everybody's vaccinated, meet in your home, take your mask off, that kind of thing. They haven't really given some clear indications. I'm going to a bar where everyone is vaccinated and there's 200 people there. They haven't really given a clear indication for that. It makes empiric sense, but again, you need to weigh your risks. And, if you've got significant issues, still to be cautious in terms of your social distancing and your mask wearing and your hand washing and all of that.
Dr. Janice Johnston, thank you for joining us today from Phoenix with this important information. And thank you for all you're doing for your patients and for everyone in our Blues community.
Yes.
Thank you. It's so nice to see you guys.
Absolutely.
Okay, we love you.
Bye.
Love you guys
Bye.
too.
Hi there, it's Jesse.
Hey, it's Audrey.
From Blues Radio International. And Audrey, did you know that there is a way to get the government to help you support the musicians you love?
Oh my gosh, I'd like to know more.
It's easy. All you have to do is go to blues.org, make a contribution to the Blues Foundation's Musicians COVID-19 Relief Fund.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh,
the money
my
goes
goodness.
directly to musicians.
Oh,
you
right.
get a tax deduction, and we're going to save the musicians who make the music we love.
Yes.
Let's do it today.
Let's do it right now. Blues.org.